The road appeared on no map. It was one of those narrow two-lane stretches of asphalt that stitched the farmlands together, unremarkable, flanked by wind-tilted telephone poles with tall grass pressing close to the white-painted edge. Locals called it the Old Hollow Lane, though you wouldn't know that by asking at the diner or the gas station. People a little farther from town had their own names for it, and most of them stopped talking about it after sundown. Ethan Parker had lived in the town long enough to understand how small places make ghosts out of rumors. He worked the late shift at the mill and drove home at odd hours. It was convenience, not superstition, that made him take the Old Hollow Lane sometimes. There was less traffic, and the radio at midnight made the drive feel private and intimate. He liked how the dashboard clock glowed 12 o'clock in cold digital blue. So when the old man at the end of the bar told him not to take that road past midnight, not that one, son. Not ever past 12. Ethan just laughed it off. Superstitions, he told himself. He had driven those lanes 100 times and nothing had ever swallowed him. But the man's voice was thick with age and something else. A kind of fear that made the old woman sitting next to him drop her coffee cup, as if remembering a smell she'd promised herself she'd never breathe again. Ethan promised himself he would obey reason and be home before midnight. He failed. That night, a storm had settled in the west like a bruised sky. A thin shift ran late. The mill stalled, then sputtered back to life just long enough to keep him there. He finally shouldered his coat and walked out to his truck, the asphalt still steaming from the afternoon heat. His GPS offered 2 routes: Gelong, concrete bypass, a 15-minute drive, or the Old Hollow, which shaved 3 minutes off his time. 3 minutes felt like a reward. He took it. The lane closed around him like 2 hands. Trees leaned over the road, their branches knitting into a dark, suffocating tunnel. The truck's headlights cut neat slices into the night, catching motes of dust and a million tiny insects that hung in the air like curious floating stars. At 11:50, he rolled the window down, letting the cool, animal smell of the night rush in. Wet dirt, wildflower rot, the faint copper tan of rain still unsettled in the fields. At 11:58, the radio fuzzed and went completely dead. Static hissed into the cab, bright and sharp as a whisper. Ethan frowned, thumbing the knob, but the stations were gone, swallowed by the night. He shrugged and tapped his fingers on the steering wheel. The clock flipped, 11:59, and then 12 o'clock. The first thing he noticed at midnight was the silence. Not the kind of silence between songs on the radio, not the kind made by closing your windows on a busy street. This was a pressure, a thick, heavy blankness that swallowed the truck's engine greedily. The hum of the night, the crickets, the distant farm dogs, the whisper of tires on tar, all of it just disappeared, as if someone had pinched the world between their fingers and held it still. Ethan's hands tightened on the wheel. He told himself the storm had just dampened the sounds. He told himself anything to keep the creeping dread at bay. Then the headlights appeared. A pale white gleam materialized around the bend ahead, low, horizontal, as if someone had laid a long lantern right on the surface of the road. Ethan slowed the truck. The glow was wrong. It was too clean, too steady, like a sheet of paper lit from within. When he rounded the curve, he saw that the glow came from nothing he could name. The road was completely empty. No car, no bicycle, no old mailbox, only the light hovering, a soft, pearly band stretching across the asphalt right where his truck needed to pass. He considered backing up, but when he touched the door handle, the cab door had a surprising, tight resistance, like it was sealed in a different kind of weather. He blinked, and the glow flared brighter. And then another thing happened. The dashboard clock ticked over to 12:01. Miles away, on a street he could not see, a dog began to bark. The normal noises of the world returned, as if someone had finally let the world breathe again. Only the light remained, sitting obediently in the road as if it were waiting for him. Ethan should have driven around it. He did not. Some small, stubborn curiosity, the most dangerous kind, pulled him forward. He eased the truck into the empty lane as if he were treading water. The light didn't scatter. It parted as his tires met it, like fog clearing around a passing ship. For one breathless second, the world blurred, and he had the absurd sensation that he had just crossed a seam in a fabric, moving into a place stitched together just a little bit wrong. He should have been relieved. He was not. At the center of the glowing band, right where his headlights now shone, something lay on the road. At first, his mind supplied easy answers. A discarded coat, a fallen road sign, a loose bale of straw. But the shape was too small and too still. He killed the engine. The unnatural quiet returned, as if the world was holding its breath right alongside him. He got out of the truck. The night air slapped at his face, colder than it had any right to be. He walked toward the shape, each step measured, the gravel singing under his boots. Up close, he saw what it was. It was a doll. It was an old-fashioned rag doll made of faded cloth and stitched with dark, careful thread. Its dress was a powder yellow that might once have been bright. A small silk ribbon, now grayed with age, was tied around its neck. Its face had been painted, but most of the paint had worn away to reveal the pale weave of the fabric beneath. Only the eyes remained, two black buttons, small and glossy, and for a moment they reflected nothing more than the beam of his flashlight. An picked it up, because most people pick up curiosities without permission. The doll was heavier than it looked, dense, as if packed with river stones. Under the fabric there was a stiffness, not stuffing, but something else, something layered with the patience of age. He turned it over. There, sewn into its back, was a tiny scrap of paper, brittle as a dried husk. On it, in a shaky hand, someone had written one single line: "Do not follow the road after midnight." He laughed then, a brittle, surprised sound, as if the world had offered him a little joke to relieve the tension. He should have burned the note, left the doll where he'd found it, driven home on the bypass, and told himself never to come back. Instead, he tucked the note into his pocket, put the doll in the truck seat beside him like an accusation, and started the engine. He told himself he would just drop it at the church lost and found. He told himself 1,000 sensible endings to this strange encounter. The truck's heater hummed, fogging the windows. For the first few miles, nothing happened, save for the steady rattle of the tires and the doll's head occasionally tapping against the cab. A mile farther, the radio returned, but faintly. And beneath the static, something else threaded through the signal, a voice so thin and faint he might have fashioned it from the wind. "Ethan," it said. He stopped the truck again. "Ethan," the voice said, clearer now, right behind his ear, but seemingly from outside the cab, as if the night itself had learned to speak his name. It was a child's voice, the kind that forms in small throats, brittle with wanting something. Ethan's heart found a new, panicked rhythm. He called out, his own voice sounding ridiculous and angry. "Who's there?" Silence answered. The truck clock glowed 12:17. The voice came again, closer this time, patient as a held breath. "Ethan, come, the road waits." He shook his head like a man chasing a fly off his face. He opened the window to swear at whoever was playing this trick. The air smelled of old summer, lemonade, dust, the metallic tang of pennies. The doll, sitting on the seat beside him, tilted its head just so, and its button eyes seemed to catch the faintest gleam, the way a mirror catches a sliver of distant light. Against all prudence, he followed. He put the truck in drive and moved forward, toward the voice, toward the light. The road narrowed until the tree branches knit completely together overhead and the sky vanished. The truck's headlights showed nothing but the white band of light ahead, and in that band the world shimmered, not like a reflection on water now, but like a half-remembered memory. Shadows moved where shadows had no business moving. A bicycle was left leaning against an invisible fence. A porch swing was in mid-sway. A child's laughter seemed to snag in the leaves overhead. Shapes of houses flickered like old photographs, projecting forgotten lives back into this wrong hour. He saw the people then not walking, but standing perfectly still, as if time had tacked them in place. They were pale and thin, their faces turned toward the road with hollowed eyes that did not see him, their mouths parted in a silence that only remembered sound. At their feet were dolls, dozens of them, scattered like secrets. Some looked new. Some were mended and worn. All of them stared with unblinking button eyes. The child's voice kept calling his name, over and over. He found himself stepping out of the truck and onto the tar. Behind him, the cab door banged shut as if in disagreement. The dolls on the ground felt warm under his palms as he knelt. 1,000 tiny stitches hummed with some small, terrible life. You don't remember the choice that binds you. Ethan thought of the paper in his pocket, the warning sewn into a rag doll's life. He thought of all the midnight drives he'd taken, of all the small mercies he'd let slide for the sake of convenience, the shortcuts, the late shifts, the small concessions men make to their own impatience. When the voice said, "Stay," it was not a demand so much as it was an answer. Ethan wanted to step back into the truck, to drive away and never speak of this road again. He wanted to be sensible. He wanted to be saved. But the road, the silent road at midnight, held a promise that lured more than fear, the promise of company for the ones who could not leave. The last thing Ethan did was put the doll down the road and walk away from his life into the band of light. When the town woke the next morning, they found his truck. The keys were on the dashboard. The driver's seat was empty. On the passenger seat, stitched neatly to the fabric, lay a small scrap of paper with a new, shaky line written across it. "Take the road at midnight. Stay with us." The rag doll's eyes, sewn with black buttons, reflected the morning sun like a pair of silent keepers. And farther down the old hollow lane, when the clock on Main Street turned to 12 and people drove home after late shifts and long dinners, the white band of light waited patiently a lantern for those too tired or too curious to refuse the path that always promised they would not be alone. Thank you for watching. If stories like this give you chills, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next descent into the darkness. See you next time.